Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are. Thanks so much for joining us today for our discussion on the top use cases for networking and infrastructure when you're using AI. We see that there's a lot of folks that are just coming onto the line right now. So what we'll do is we'll give it about 30 seconds or so, and then JT and I will be back and we'll get things started. So we'll see you in about 30 seconds. All right, JT, let's get kicking and started.
Like a plan.
So thank you everyone for joining us today. As we mentioned just 30 seconds ago, this discussion is going to focus on top use cases when you're using AI for your infrastructure and networking use cases. This is part of a three-part series. First, what is AI? The second is the top use cases for security. And then now we'll focus on the top use cases for infrastructure. And the impetus, well, actually, let's introduce ourselves first. So my name is Kevin Chu. I'm responsible for product marketing at Versa.
My name is John Taylor. I'm a director of security here at Versa Networks.
And the impetus behind these discussions and these topics is because while AI has been such a popular and such a hot topic, it's actually very difficult in many ways to figure out what are the most practical use cases versus those that are just good topics to talk about, but for which there's really not a lot of practical implementation for it. And so we wanted to have a frank and honest discussion about what these use cases look like. Now, before we jump into it, it is helpful just to anchor ourselves a little bit from one of our earlier ones, our earlier discussions, because like the way we think about AI at the end of the day, it's about how you consume massive amounts of data, how you make sense of it, and then by nature of that, being able to find practical use cases to either accelerate or enhance some of the use cases that you might have across your day-to-day operations, whether it's security or networking. So from a networking perspective, we went out, we talked to our customers, we talked to folks that are parts of our ecosystem and community and asked them, what are the common use cases that you're using today for AI? And the 5 topics that we'll talk about today will be: 1, how you can use it as part of capacity planning and utilization; how you can make sure that in the case that something doesn't quite go right in your network, like it can be a mechanism to both identify, but also give you context for how you remediate. The third is how you ensure that performance is at optimal levels. The fourth is that it starts to change the way that you're actually interacting with your tools. And the fifth, which is a little bit of a non sequitur, but we did want to make mention of it, is that for all of the use cases for AI for networking, we should make sure that your networking is also ready for AI. So with that being said, JT, let me hand it over to you to cover the first one.
Excellent. So first off, right, let's talk about capacity planning and maintenance, right? So what can AI really do for us? That the one thing to kind of keep in mind around AI is, in per one of our previous webinars that we've had, is that we're not in a scenario where we're in general AI. We're not in a scenario where we're in super intelligent AI. We're still in this weak kind of AI model, right? Where we're still feeding it, we're still caring for it, and so forth. So there are limitations, right, in what it can do, but there's a lot of things AI can help us out with, on a day-to-day basis, right? So when it comes down to capacity planning, right, AI helps with this by leveraging data-driven predictions. We feed it, what we can, we teach it what we can, and it helps optimize resource utilization, automate network management and things like that. So that way we can can get things like our improved accuracy, right? We can get cost efficiency down, right? And what that really means is that, it avoids the over, the over or under provisioning, right, of networkings. We have this habit, right, from a I would say a practitioner standpoint, to go in and build giant networks. And we definitely want to not over engineer it, but we want to make sure that we have a plan of what's my growth going to be, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 years, how something like that works. And so we usually have to make a lot of investment, and hopefully we don't miss that mark, either north or south of that. But a lot of times we do. We either under provision or we underscale our network, and a lot of times we might even overscale our networks. And then roughly in about that 3-year time frame, we're trying to figure out how we pull that back. So that scalability, right, that cost efficiency absolutely needs to be there for us. And this is what AI can start taking all that information that we know from year over year and help us plan for that, right, and help us also dynamically do it as we start getting into more things where circuits become dynamic. You're paying for bandwidth. You're not necessarily paying for, just a circuit itself. It also helps you understand like what's your cost going to be, from a day to day, month to month, and year to year. It helps us with faster decision making, right, as well, because it helps enable real time decision making based on that data analysis. So once again, if I'm having issues within my network, or if I have something that's going on, I can have AI make real time decision makings based upon the information it's receiving, specifically from a maintenance standpoint, that allows for immediate adjustments, preventing potential network issues, right, as well. So like I said, huge when it comes down to capacity planning, right, and making sure that we know what's going on, making sure that we understand what our network needs, right, from a day to day. It also helps us transition more into that consumption based model versus it being just a static model where we're buying 10 gig circuits, 5 gig circuits, a gig circuit, something like that. We actually know what we're going to be growing into over the course of the next 3 years, and it helps us plan accordingly, right, for the future. Kevin, I think next up, right, AI for fault detection and self-healing networks, right? Tell us what AI can do for that.
Yeah, and it's a nice cousin topic to capacity planning because capacity planning allows you to forward think to what the network might look like in a few days, a few months, a few, anytime in the future, so you can allocate your bandwidth appropriately. The corollary to that is in the case that something happens on your infrastructure, it allows you to be able to react very quickly. And to the point earlier about what is AI, and the idea that in its simplest form, it's the ability to consume and make sense of lots and lots of data. If you think about what you're doing on a day-to-day basis with data and with your network, a lot of times you're often reacting to the data as it's feeding information back to you. And so what AI allows you to do is to basically do the same thing. Like you're always monitoring all this information across your entire infrastructure, be able to make sense of it in the case that something happens, be able to identify one, what happened. Like, in fact, we often hear that one of the toughest parts to figure out is actually what happened. But then two, why did it happen? And by nature of knowing both of those, you know how to remediate. Now, the slightly more advanced use cases, which I know we talked about this as being the most practical, I think some of the ones that we're starting to see as up and coming use cases lend themselves to one, giving you the recommendations for how you can respond and how you can remediate. But also, second, in many cases, it takes automation into account. And so if one of your sites go down or if one of your links go down, it gives you it gives you a recommendation for how you remediate so that the user that's sitting behind it is able to keep the experience that they have in a perfect infrastructure and network. But also, in some cases, it automatically remediates itself without having to ask. Now, that's a more advanced use case, and you do have to consider, like, in what scenario you necessarily want to trust AI, and what scenario you want to trust the tool to be able to automatically take action. But it is increasingly a use case that we're seeing in more and more of our deployments today. JT, so I think we talked a bit about both for the infrastructure, how you capacity plan for what happens once everything is up and running, but the world isn't quite going as you had planned. Like, what if we talk a little bit about how you maintain that application performance for the end user that's sitting behind that site or the device?
Absolutely. Right. So one big thing, all right, that's out there is, or I hear from customers is that, I have to have my applications up, right? We all know that's the case, right? We cannot have applications down. Applications being down, unavailable means loss of revenue, right? It is stagnant business. It's the death of it, right? So we have to, look at, how can we improve application thresholds and improve performance, right? For end users, no matter where they are, right? And so this is whether you're coming in remote, whether you're coming in from a from an on-prem site, standpoint, whether or not you're going across MPLS, whether or not you're going across SD-WAN, it doesn't matter, right? We have to make sure that we're improving that application threshold. So a lot of things that AI can do, right? From an application, threshold and improving performance is dynamically manage network resources, right? Help predict future demands. We talked about that a little bit with the capacity planning, but this really is kind of moving in toward, if I understand the application threshold, if I understand what my future demands are, taking a management issue and making sure that I can dynamically adjust my QoS, dynamically adjust the quality of experience, right, that end user is going to have, prioritize traffic as necessary. That's huge for us. It provides a real-time adjustment, or it can provide real-time adjustments, to ensure applications run efficiently and reliably. Proactive management is huge, right? This is a thing that we talk about, and I'm a security guy, right? So let's relate it back to some of the security stuff that's out there. Being able to have proactive management and being able to predict, right, and catch something before it enters my network is absolutely profound. Imagine being able to do that on the network, though, right? We spend a lot of times trying to point fingers. Is it the desktop having a problem? Is it the network having a problem? Is it a security problem, right? Is it a wireless problem, right? What is going on, potentially with my end users, right? And why can they not access certain things? Being able to have that visibility, being able to see what's there, right? Being able to understand if it's a network issue, how to proactively, adjust for that, right? Also have that dynamic adaptability there where we can adjust performance thresholds in real time, being able to have the resource optimization and improving that user experience, right? By keeping applications, with an optimal performance threshold, AI can ensure smooth and reliable user experience, right, at the end of the day. So we don't get phone calls right back to our help desk. We don't get phone calls back into our NOC. We're not chasing ghosts, right? We're not having other other business units or other divisions chasing ghosts within the I would say the infrastructure. We're actually able to pinpoint where our problems are, take proactive, decisions, and fix them. And then we're also able to kind of swing back, right, on the back end of that. And from a human element, go back and validate exactly what was wrong. If there's tickets that need to be open, if we need to work with our telcos, if we need to work something that nature, right, we can absolutely do that while the user is not impacted, right, at the end of the day. Another way to kind of look at that too is how we also interact with our tools, right? We've made a huge investment when it comes down to the tools in which we use from a networking perspective. I know that we have whether it be alerting tools, SIMs, right? We've put metrics everywhere, and we have to use that. So we can't just abandon our tools right at the end of the day. We have this new thing called AI. How can we truly interact with something like that, right? So we have to enhance our interaction, right? Once again, with our networking side or within our networking tools, we have to have that improved efficiency where we can automate and optimize. We can process, we can process information, right, that was previously a manual thing, right? Once again, seeing circuits go down, understanding if there's a dirty circuit, right? Understanding if there's something that's going on, right? Being able to identify that, make the phone call. I can remember when I was a network engineer, some of this stuff would take me, 45 minutes just to get to, hey, I have to call the telco, right? It's not just I've tested the line, I've tested L1, right? From a layer perspective, I've done everything I possibly could. The this is actually an issue, right? With a routing protocol, sitting out there in telco land. So, being able to have that approved efficiency is huge. Being able to also make things like, or make better decisions, right, around, with the existing tools that we have. Imagine being able to take the information that I have coming into my SIM, right, from a networking perspective. I'm taking all of my networking logs, right? I understand exactly what's going on. Instead of me having to correlate that data manually, having AI be able to say, hey, I've seen this before in the past. It's very similar. And I can make a decision that this is a bad circuit, right? Or this is a dirty circuit. Have it send me an alert saying, look, call your telco, right? Go out there and call the Verizons, the AT&Ts and so forth of the world, right? Because this is the problem that you're having, and being able to put that directly in your face. This helps you in cost savings, right, as well, because guess what? I'm no longer having to staff large NOCs, right? And that's not necessarily saying I have to skinny down my staff for any reason. I can now have people in my NOC going back to certain things like day jobs, looking at, architecture enhancements, looking at, how to better my network right from that perspective, while I'm not having to look at, having, 3, 10, 5, how many ever people are in your NOC, right? Looking at my network in any given time, and then also doing the investigation, right, for any ticket that has to come out there. So it helps us reduce downtime. It helps us enhance cost effectiveness, right, in that network management side. Kevin, I think there's a couple of things out there that you wanted to talk about, right, as well.
Yeah, actually, well, I'll bring it up for you to talk about. I suppose.
Okay, go ahead.
But I think just as we were looking and thinking through some of these topical items, I think one item that yes, it is about how it integrates existing tools. When we think about interacting with tools, what I often also think about is just the way that you're actually using them on a day-to-day basis, because in a lot of ways, any of our tools, right, like today, whether it's a networking tool, it's a security tool, it's a marketing tool, it's a sales tool, engineering tool, all these tools today, largely when you think about the way you interact with them, it's like point, click, type, right? And like whether it's a policy configuration, whether it's you looking at data that's coming out of these tools, I think what you're also starting to see is the beginning of a change in the paradigm for how you interact with it, right? Like now you're starting to ask it in natural language, or now you're starting to use co-pilots. Now you're starting to ask it for recommendations, like policy recommendations that almost abstract away things like regex patterns. And so it does look like it's the start of like some change in the way that we think about UI. I think it's probably what it will look like as a forecast is likely hard to exactly know, but we are starting to see that the way that you actually use your tools is going to be different. JT, I'm not sure if there's anything to add to that. I meant to ask a question, but then
I was going to say, you said you're going to ask me a question, and that's kind of what it is. I think you brought up one thing, right, that's actually pretty huge, because with AI does come new tools, right? You mentioned co-pilots, right? For instance, this has been a big thing in the industry today. Ask our co-pilot what's going on, right? It's a, the big thing is think about it, right? How do I integrate, AI? How do I integrate their tools, co-pilots being a prime example of that, into my existing tool set? How can I utilize something like a co-pilot, right, when it comes into, looking at my data, looking at my network metrics, right? How do I ask it questions? How can I have it take, some type of more automated remediation, but still keep a human element behind that, right? Because I have a lot of customers who ask me, even from a security perspective, right? It's I want to make sure that I still have human interaction. I don't want to turn the keys over to something like to AI. I don't want to turn it over to Skynet, right? In one of my previous, webinars, right, that we've done, Kevin, it's, we talk about, hey, the super intelligent AI, Skynet's going to take everything for us. So I don't want to turn it over to Skynet. I still want to make sure that I have my guys looking at it to validate it, because they know my network. And that gets us into things like, enhanced security and performance, right? The seamless upgrade side, right, as well, is that being able to integrate, AI easily within those tools. And we're seeing it from an industry perspective. It's becoming easier and easier and easier because we have the ability to look at more and more data, not just from a single organization, right? We're being able to see this data coming from multiple different organizations. We're seeing tools like SIMS and SOARs and things of that nature that are utilizing AI more. So they're able to crunch this data, this big data model, crunch it, right? And be able to actually have an intelligent decision coming off the back end. So being able to have, like I said, the seamless updates, allows networks to evolve, right? By integrating, with those existing tools, right? Being able to bring something in like a co-pilot to ask questions of, hey, what's going on in the world today? You're like, why is my network running slow, right? And then actually have it pull back those metrics for you. And then, like I said, I'm a security guy, right? I can't say it enough on the call, but having that enhanced security and performance, boost the capabilities of those traditional tools as they integrate further, improving, both security and networking performance, understanding, where security, controls are within the network itself, understand if a security control is blocking traffic, if it is hindering traffic, right, in some way. That gets us back into some of that improved efficiency, right, that's out there on the very top. But also on the networking side, right, we don't have to we don't replace, legacy systems, right? We don't have to require something to be replaced. We can integrate it across the board, right? Because AI is just looking at the data that's coming out and giving me some type of intelligent decision right on the back end of that.
And perhaps just a final note on that. I think we're talking about it as if in many cases it's new. I think for a lot of people that are on the line, or for a lot of people that we talk to, it's not necessarily that it's going to be a new tool. It's just that your UIs will start to change and the way that you interact with them will change. So it could just be your existing tools will evolve. So uh, just to close out our discussion, I know that we said that this is about how you can use AI for your network and your infrastructure and how you optimize performance and uptime. The one thing we'd be remiss if we didn't mention, like JT and I debated, like, well, this isn't really that, but we'd be remiss if we didn't actually talk about it, given how much we see AI workloads sitting on our community infrastructures today. We know that many of you are building out your own AI models, and by nature of that, you're building infrastructure in order to support all those AI models. So we'll just make a quick mention that if you're doing that, it also means that your network has to be a friend to your AI. And that means that for all the data and all the power consumption, and for all the locations where AI is either being used or generated, your infrastructure needs to be able to support that. And that means a lot of different things for a lot of different companies, but ultimately it means that the data needs to be able to move very quickly between different parts of your infrastructure. So if you're processing from really remote areas or central locations, you need to find a way to get your data there for processing, but also a way for it to get back out to where enforcement occurs or where it's being used. Or in some cases, you're starting to see increasing use cases where AI is actually being pushed out of central locations so that they're closer to where it's being used itself. But also, JT talked a bit about how you prioritize the right applications. In many ways, AI is an application. So thinking about how you can scale your infrastructure to support such massive workloads, how you make sure that you're able to prioritize AI for either processing or use, but also making sure that it's done in a cost-efficient way. Like we do see a lot of these infrastructures today that are really, really expensive to operate, whether it's because sometimes you're using public cloud, sometimes that is hard to control, or sometimes you're trying to build your own infrastructure, and that's a lot of capex at the very beginning. So we'd be remiss if we didn't sort of give the inverse use case about how networks should also support AI, but also to make sure to remember that there's a lot of questions around how that data is handled, whether it's for security purposes or whether it's for data sovereignty. So certainly keep those in mind as you're building out your AI infrastructure. So with that being said, I think that takes us to the top of the period. JT, you want to close us out here?
Yeah. So look, right. Every organization out there today is really kind of bringing their own AI right to the table. Whether it be a networking firm, whether it be a security firm, whether it even be a firm like like notifications, help desk ticketing, right? Everybody is integrating, AI in somewhere. And it's really there to help you. It's not there to hinder you in some ways. So versus doing the exact same thing, right? One of the things I would actually say is that our call to action here would be go out and learn what Versa Networks is doing. Go to versanetworks.com/AI hyphen labs. Understand exactly what's kind of going on out there. Versa Networks is a unified SASE company. We do networking and we do security. So we are actually, applying our AI in both of those realms. When we look at it from a networking perspective, we're doing things like, predictive networking. We're allowing ourselves to utilize, our solutions and be able to do more within the solution that we're having, right? When I say that, it is, from our analytics plane, being able to see all of our networking, all of our security data, and take actions based upon both sides of that house, not just looking at it from either a networking metric or a security metric. So, like I said, a lot of organizations are coming out and they're utilizing AI in just about everything that they do. Understand, right, when you're looking at platforms today, and if you're just looking at an AI model, for said platforms or what that AI can do, understand how an organization applies AI, right? I think, like Kevin said, AI is not something that is new, right? This isn't, AI has been around for quite a while. We're still, like I said, we're still in that weak, AI phase where we're still feeding it and learning it, right, and trying to, grow it, as such. But multiple organizations apply AI in multiple different places. So if you're looking at how AI can work for you, definitely dig in with each one of those. Once again, go to versanetworks.com/AI hyphen labs, right, and understand what we can do. One of the things I will say, right, is because due to the short duration of the of this webinar, any Q&A, right, because we do have quite a few questions that are in the chat right now. All Q&A, right, we will follow up with those. So don't think that that we're trying to ignore your questions, right, or anything of that nature. We will be following up. We will be so you will have a customized message, right, from Versa Networks, from the account teams, right, and so forth. If you want to know more, once again, hit that see it in action when you go there. You can sign up for demos, right, and things of that nature. We're more than happy to come and showcase what we have. Kevin, any last words from you?
No, I think what I will just ask of the group. I think, well, I was going to say two things. I think you took one. So one, we do see an awful lot of questions on the line, and we're sorry we're not able to get to them today, but we'll just directly handle them offline with you. But the second is also we really do hope that these discussions have been helpful. And in the case that there's any topics that you think will be helpful for us to double click and do, please do reach out to us, and we'll make sure to, potentially that triggers an idea for another discussion, or we might be able to just have a side discussion on some of these things. But we thought this would be a good uh, foundational set of discussions on AI, given the type of discourse we're having within our own community today. So thanks everyone for joining us today. We hope you found this either interesting or useful, or hopefully both. And we look forward to future discussions. Take it easy. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great one.